The rush that comes from stepping into forgotten places never gets old. Walking into somewhere that's been left behind, with dust in the air and light coming through broken windows, is cool. At least, that's what the others always said. For me, the appeal was different. I was drawn to the stories these places held, the whispers of lives once lived and suddenly interrupted. "Mark, get a shot of this," Alex called out, her voice bouncing off the concrete walls of the old manufacturing plant we'd been exploring. She stood on a rusted conveyor belt, purple-tipped hair catching the afternoon sunlight through the collapsed roof. I raised my camera and clicked, taking her victory pose against the old factory background. Last week it had been an abandoned office building downtown, this week a factory outside town. Next week would be something new. That was our pattern. "Got it," I replied, checking the image on my screen. "But we should probably start heading back. Light's going to be gone in an hour." Tom nodded as he carefully stepped across the debris-covered floor. "Mark's right. Besides, I've mapped most of the West Wing now." Sarah looked up from her notebook where she'd been sketching the layout. "The architecture here is fascinating. Classic industrial design from the 1940s with those Art Deco touches on the support columns." "Nobody follows us for architectural history lessons, Sarah," Alex said, jumping down from her spot easily. "They follow for the adventure, the mystery, the thrill of seeing places they'd never dare enter themselves. Some of us care about more than just social media engagement," Sarah replied, but her tone was light. This was an old argument they'd had many times. We packed up our gear and made our way back to Tom's SUV. Our exploration had been successful but ordinary, just another abandoned building with the usual signs of decay and occasional evidence of squatters or teenage partiers. Nothing special for our documentation. "Same time next week?" Tom asked as we loaded our equipment. "Actually, I found something that might interest you guys," Alex said, her eyes lighting up with that spark that usually meant trouble. "Something different." "Different how?" I asked, feeling skeptical. "I was scouting the old district yesterday, you know, where all those Victorian houses are. There's this place hidden behind a huge brick wall covered in ivy. You can barely see it from the street, but I caught glimpses of the upper floors. It's a mansion, completely intact from what I could tell. Probably just a private residence," Sarah suggested, closing her notebook. Alex shook her head. "No way. I watched for hours. No one went in or out, no lights, nothing. But here's the weird part. I couldn't find any information about it online. Not a single mention in property records, historical registers, nothing." My brother perked up at this. "That's impossible. Every property has records." "Exactly," Alex said with a grin. "Which makes it perfect for us." I felt a knot form in my stomach. If there are no records, it could be government property, or something with legal complications we don't want to get involved in. Or it could be our most interesting exploration yet, Tom countered, already hooked on the idea. The next day we drove to the location Alex had found. The wall was just as she described. Tall red brick almost completely covered in thick ivy, running the length of an entire block. We walked around it looking for any way in. The only gate we found was heavy iron, padlocked and showing no signs of recent use. "We could try to peek through," Sarah suggested, but the gate had no gaps large enough to see through. Tom tried climbing onto my shoulders to look over the top of the wall, but even with our combined height, he could barely see more than the upper portion of the mansion. "It's huge," he reported as I let him down. "Victorian or maybe Gothic revival. Looks completely intact, no broken windows, no obvious damage, but the garden's completely overgrown." "I don't like this," I said, looking up and down the quiet street. "Why would a place this size be completely abandoned but still kept up enough to keep people out?" "That's the mystery, isn't it?" Alex said, eyes gleaming. "And we're going to solve it." Over the next few days, we each tried to gather information. Sarah checked historical archives, Tom looked into property records, Alex scouted the perimeter again, and I asked around the neighborhood. No one had answers, just vague mentions of the old place and uncomfortable shrugs when pressed for details. It's like the whole neighborhood has decided to ignore it exists, I said during our next meeting at a coffee shop. One old woman actually walked away when I asked about it. The record's dead end in the 1920s, Tom added. It's like the property just disappeared from official documents. Alex leaned forward, excitement evident. Don't you see how perfect this is? We've never had a mystery like this before. Our followers will go crazy for it. Or maybe there's a reason no one talks about it, I countered. But I could tell my concerns were falling on deaf ears. The others were already captivated by the challenge. We returned to the wall twice more that week, each time trying to find a way in. We even brought a small drone to fly over the top, but it malfunctioned as soon as it cleared the wall, dropping straight down to the other side. Probably just a signal issue, Alex said, but the incident only deepened my unease. On Friday evening, we gathered at Tom's apartment to finalize our plan. Maps and printouts covered his dining table, along with equipment lists and sketches based on what little we could see of the property. We need a way over that wall, Tom said, pointing at his rough diagram. It's about 12 feet high, too tall for a simple boost. I know a place where we can get some wood pallets, Alex suggested. We could stack them and make a ladder. Sarah nodded, making notes. We'll need better flashlights than usual. If the place has been sealed up for decades, it's going to be dark inside. As they continued planning, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Something about this mansion felt different from our other explorations. Not just the mystery surrounding it, but something more basic that I couldn't explain. Mark, Tom's voice pulled me back to the present. You're awful quiet. What's on your mind? I turned to face the others. Don't you think it's strange? A building that big, that old, and not a single piece of information about it? No graffiti, no vandalism, no signs of squatters. In this city, nothing stays untouched that long without a reason. That's why we have to be the ones to document it, Alex insisted. Think about it. We could be the first ones inside in who knows how long. Or maybe others have tried and just never talked about it afterward, I replied, the knot in my stomach tightening. Sarah gave me a concerned look. If you're really uncomfortable with this, we don't have to go. I glanced around at their faces, Tom's quiet determination, Alex's barely contained excitement, Sarah's thoughtful curiosity. Despite my reservations, I knew they would go with or without me. And if there was any truth to my unease, I couldn't let my brother face it without me. No, I'm in, I said finally. Someone has to be the voice of reason when you three get carried away. Alex clapped her hands together. Then it's settled. Tomorrow morning, we make history. As they returned to their planning with renewed enthusiasm, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever waited for us behind that ivy-covered wall had been waiting a very long time. And perhaps it had been watching us just as we had been watching it. The night before our expedition, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that ivy-covered wall and imagined what waited beyond it. When my alarm finally buzzed at 5:30 a.m., I was already awake, staring at the ceiling. I met the others at the corner a block away from the mansion, the early morning fog still clinging to the streets. Tom's SUV was loaded with our gear: cameras, flashlights, extra batteries, water, and basic tools. Alex arrived last, her truck bed filled with wooden pallets she'd scavenged from behind a grocery store. "Everyone ready?" she asked, her breath visible in the cool morning air. Tom nodded, checking his phone. Sun's coming up in 20 minutes. Streets should be empty now. We unloaded the pallets and carried them to the most secluded section of the wall, away from streetlights and neighboring windows. Tom and I stacked them carefully, creating a makeshift ladder that looked far less stable than I would have preferred. "I'll go first," Tom said, testing the bottom pallet with his weight. "If it holds me, it'll hold the rest of you." I watched anxiously as my brother climbed. The wood creaked but held. When he reached the top, he straddled the wall and looked down at the other side. "Holy shit," he whispered. "You guys need to see this." One by one, we followed. Alex went next. then Sarah. I came last, my hands gripping the uneven wood as I climbed. At the top, I paused, taking in what lay beyond. The garden was once nice. Even with years of wild growth, I could see the old design: stone paths, old hedgerows, and overgrown flower beds full of weeds and brambles. The mansion stood in the middle. It was bigger than we'd thought. 3 stories of dark stone with arched windows. The windows were covered with old boards, the wood gray from age. Morning light hit the stained glass above the main entrance, showing bits of color on the overgrown lawn. "How is this place still standing?" I muttered as Tom helped me down from the wall. "More importantly, how is it this undisturbed?" Sarah added, looking around with concern. "No graffiti, no broken windows beyond the boards, no signs anyone's been here." "It's perfect," Alex whispered, already snapping photos. We made our way through the tangled garden, following what remained of a stone path. Up close, the mansion was even bigger. Stone figures sat along the roofline, their faces worn smooth by weather. "We need a way in," Tom said, running his hand along the weathered wooden door at the front. "This isn't budging without making noise." We circled the building looking for entry points. On the back side, Alex spotted it, a window at ground level with one board hanging loose. "Kitchen entrance," she said, already moving toward it. With a few careful tugs, the board came free, revealing intact glass behind it. Alex produced a glass cutter from her bag and made quick work of creating an opening large enough for us to slip through. "Ladies first," she said with a grin, hoisting herself onto the windowsill. I watched as she disappeared inside, followed by Sarah. Tom gave me a questioning look. "Still okay with this?" he asked. I nodded, though my stomach was tight with anxiety. Too late to back out now. The kitchen was surprisingly intact. Cast iron pots hung from a rack over an old wood-burning stove. Cabinets with glass fronts revealed china dishes still neatly stacked inside. The floor was clean, unnaturally clean for an abandoned building. "Where's all the dust?" I asked, running my finger along a countertop. It came away almost clean. This place should be inches deep after decades of abandonment. "Maybe it's not as abandoned as we thought," Sarah suggested, examining a heavy wooden table in the center of the room. "No signs of squatters, though," Tom observed. "No trash, no bedding, nothing." "Let's check the rest of the place before we start theorizing," Alex said, already moving toward the swinging door that led deeper into the house. The main hall was grand, with a sweeping staircase leading to the upper floors. Furniture covered in white sheets stood throughout the space. The air was cool and fresh, not musty like I expected. "Split up?" Alex suggested. "No way," I said firmly. "We stay together." We moved through the first floor methodically, documenting as we went. The formal dining room still had a massive table with chairs pushed in neatly. The study contained empty bookshelves and a desk with nothing in its drawers. A sitting room had more covered furniture, all neatly arranged. "This is weird," Tom said, lifting one sheet to reveal a perfectly preserved armchair. "It's like someone prepared the house to be left, not abandoned it." In the grand hall again, Sarah pointed to something on the mantelpiece. "Guys, look." A single framed photograph stood there, the only personal item we'd seen. I moved closer, picking it up carefully. It showed a black dog, some kind of mastiff with a broad chest and strong jaw. The dog was sitting upright, staring directly at the camera intensely. It looked almost human. "Why would someone leave everything else but keep this here?" I asked, setting it back down. "Maybe they didn't," Tom said. "Maybe someone comes back." The thought sent a chill through me. I glanced at the front door, half expecting it to swing open. "Let's check upstairs," Alex said, already moving toward the staircase. The steps didn't creak as we ascended, another oddity in a house this old. The second floor had a long hallway with doors on either side. We found bedroom after empty bedroom, each with a metal frame bed stripped of linens, empty wardrobes, and vacant dressers, until the last room. The door swung open to reveal a bedroom unlike the others. This one had a 4-poster bed with sheets, blankets and pillows, all perfectly made. A glass of water sat on the nightstand. The wardrobe doors stood open, revealing several dark suits hanging inside. "It looks like someone's expecting to sleep here tonight," Sarah whispered. "This doesn't make sense," I said, my voice barely audible even to myself. "The rest of the house is prepared for long-term vacancy, but this room... Maybe it's for show," Tom suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "Either way, we should be quiet," I said, just in case. From that point on, we all whispered, even though we had no proof anyone would hear us. The quiet house made us feel like we needed to be silent. As the light outside began to fade, shadows spread across the floors and walls. We made our way back downstairs, the mansion feeling scarier by the minute. "We should head out soon," I suggested. "I don't want to be here after dark." "One last sweep of the first floor," Alex insisted, heading back toward the kitchen. The rest of us followed, keeping close together. In the kitchen, Alex examined the cabinets and drawers more carefully, looking for anything we might have missed. She stopped suddenly, kneeling by a door I hadn't noticed before. "Guys," she said, sounding excited, "this is different." The door was smaller than the others, made of metal rather than wood, with a heavy lock securing it. Unlike everything else in the house, this door looked newer, its hinges free of rust. "Basement, probably," Tom said, kneeling beside her to examine the lock. "Why lock it when the rest of the house is open?" I asked. Alex looked up at me excited. "That's exactly what we need to find out." I stared at the metal door as Alex ran her fingers around its frame, examining the heavy lock with growing interest. "Can you pick it?" Tom asked, crouching beside her. Alex pulled a small case from her pocket and unzipped it to reveal a set of lockpicks. Basic tumbler system. Old, but not ancient. Shouldn't be too hard. "Maybe we shouldn't," I said, that usual knot of unease tightening in my stomach. "If this is the one thing in the house someone wanted to secure, then it's exactly what we need to see," Alex interrupted, already inserting a tension wrench into the keyhole. Sarah glanced at her watch. "We've already been here longer than planned. If we're going to do this, let's be quick about it." The lock clicked open after about 2 minutes of Alex's careful manipulation. She looked up at us with a triumphant smile. "Told you. Easy." The door swung open with a low, protesting creak that bounced around the kitchen. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it a musty smell of earth and something else I couldn't quite place. Our flashlight beams revealed a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Just a basement," Tom said, though he didn't sound convinced. Alex went first, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Tom followed, then Sarah, with me bringing up the rear. The wooden steps were solid under our feet, showing none of the decay I'd expect in a century-old house. As we descended, I realized this wasn't like any basement I'd seen before. The stairs kept going down, much farther than made sense for a typical cellar. I counted 38 steps before we reached the bottom. The temperature dropped with each step until I could see my breath clouding in the beam of my flashlight. "Guys, this isn't just a basement," I said as we reached the bottom. Our lights revealed a crossroads of sorts. The walls were a combination of fitted stone and packed earth, with wooden support beams placed at regular intervals. Water glistened on the walls and small puddles had formed on the packed dirt floor. "Holy shit," Alex whispered, her voice carrying a hint of awe rather than fear. "These extend way beyond the house's foundation." Tom pointed his flashlight beam down each passage in turn. "Looks like we've got ourselves a proper tunnel network." "But why?" Sarah asked. "These aren't utility tunnels. They're too crude, and they look older than the house itself." I knelt down, examining a patch of decaying leaves gathered in one corner. "Look at this. These are oak leaves, fresh from this season. There must be outside access points somewhere." "That explains the draft," Tom said, "and maybe how someone got in to clean the house." Alex was already moving toward the leftmost tunnel. "Let's see where they lead." "Wait," I called, pulling a piece of chalk from my pocket. I marked an arrow on the wall, pointing back to the stairs. We mark our path. I don't want to get lost down here. The others nodded, and we proceeded together down the left passage. I drew arrows at each junction we passed. The tunnels narrowed as we went deeper, the ceiling gradually lowering until Tom and I had to hunch over to avoid hitting our heads on the support beams. The engineering is actually impressive, Sarah said, running her hand along one wall. These have stood for decades, maybe longer, with minimal maintenance. Less admiring, more exploring, Alex replied, though there was no real heat in her voice. We walked for what felt like 20 minutes, the silence broken only by our footsteps and the occasional drip of water. The air grew colder, and a persistent feeling of wrongness started building in my chest. Something about these tunnels felt purposeful. Not like abandoned mine shafts or forgotten utility passages, but something designed with specific intent. "Check this out," Tom called, his voice bouncing around strangely in the confined space. He'd stopped at a small alcove off the main tunnel. Our flashlights illuminated a space about 8 feet square, just tall enough to stand in. A dusty sleeping bag lay rolled out on the ground, surrounded by empty food cans and a battery-powered lantern. "Someone's been living down here," I said, feeling my skin crawl at the thought. Alex picked up one of the cans. "These aren't that old, maybe a few weeks." Sarah knelt by the sleeping bag, careful not to touch it. "A squatter, perhaps? Someone who found a way in and needed shelter?" "Pretty extreme choice of shelter," Tom said. "All those empty bedrooms upstairs would be more comfortable than this." I examined the lantern. It still had batteries in it, and when I flicked the switch, it produced a weak yellow glow. "Whoever it is might still be around," I said, switching the lantern off again. "We should be careful." We left the alcove and continued down the tunnel. The passage curved to the right, and the ceiling dropped even lower, forcing us all to crouch as we proceeded. The air changed, becoming damper with an unpleasant smell that seemed vaguely familiar. "Do you smell that?" I asked. Tom nodded. "Like something dead. Probably just mold or stagnant water," Sarah suggested, but she didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe whatever our tunnel dweller's been eating," Alex added. We rounded another bend and found ourselves facing another metal door, this one larger and more substantial than the one in the kitchen. A heavy padlock secured it, newer looking than its surroundings. "Bingo," Alex said, moving forward with her lockpicks already in hand. The smell was stronger here, a sickly sweet scent of decay that made my stomach turn. The temperature had dropped several more degrees, to the point where I could see all our breaths in the flashlight beams. The walls seemed to press in around us, and even Alex's voice sounded different, muffled and distant despite her standing right next to us. "I don't like this," Sarah said, wrapping her arms around herself. "I think we should go back." "We can't leave now," Tom insisted, shining his light on the door. "We need to know what's behind there." "Could be nothing," Alex said as she worked on the lock. "Could be everything. This is a much better lock than the one upstairs. Someone really doesn't want people getting in." As Alex worked, I moved my flashlight beam along the walls and ceiling. Water droplets shone in the darkness, but something felt off about the shadows. They seemed to move slightly when not directly illuminated, as if moving just outside my field of vision. A deep, bone-penetrating cold settled over me that had nothing to do with the actual temperature. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I couldn't shake the overwhelming sense that we were being watched. "Guys," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "does anyone else feel like we're being watched?" Sarah nodded immediately. "I've had that feeling since we entered this section of the tunnel." "Just your imagination," Alex muttered, still focused on the lock. "Old places play tricks on you." "I don't think so," I said, sweeping my flashlight across the tunnel behind us. The beam caught nothing unusual, but the feeling persisted. "Something's not right here." "Almost got it," Alex said, ignoring my concern. The lock was proving more challenging than the one upstairs. Tom moved his light to join mine, searching the darkness behind us. I don't see anything, but I feel it too. The silence in the tunnel was absolute except for the soft clicking of Alex's lockpicks. No dripping water, no distant sounds, nothing. My own breathing seemed too loud in my ears, and with each exhale, the cloud of vapor grew thicker in the cold air. "There's something down here with us," I whispered, unable to explain how I knew but absolutely certain. Something that doesn't want us to open that door. My flashlight beam trembled slightly as I continued sweeping it over the walls, unable to shake the feeling that something was watching us. The silence pressed against my ears. "This lock is being stubborn," Alex muttered, focusing hard. "But I'm close." I opened my mouth to suggest again that we should leave, when a sound froze all of us in place. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps sounded from somewhere deeper in the tunnels. We all heard it. The unmistakable sound of shoes or boots against packed earth, each step measured and purposeful. The rhythm was too regular, too intentional to be water dripping or settling earth. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. The temperature plummeted. The cold that had been uncomfortable before now turned biting, cutting through my layers of clothing. My breath came out in thick clouds of vapor. "Someone's down here," Tom whispered, gripping my arm. "We need to go. Now." Even Alex had stopped working on the lock, her face pale in the glow of our flashlights. It could just be another explorer. The footsteps grew slightly louder. Whoever, or whatever, was making them was getting closer. "I'm not waiting to find out," Tom said. "Let's move." We turned and began retracing our steps, moving as quietly as possible. I led the way, focusing on finding the chalk marks I'd left at each junction. The footsteps continued behind us, keeping a steady pace, until we started moving faster. The sound changed, the rhythm quickening to match our increased pace. Not running, but walking with more urgency, as if whatever was following us knew exactly how fast we were moving and was adjusting accordingly. "It's following us," Sarah whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Just keep moving," I replied, trying to keep the panic from my voice. We reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. I hesitated, trying to remember which way we had come. The chalk mark I'd left was smudged, barely visible in the dim light. "Left," Tom said, pointing. "We came from the left." As we turned toward the left tunnel, some instinct made me look back over my shoulder. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness of the passage we'd just left, and illuminated a figure standing perfectly still at the far end. It was a man. At least, it had the general shape of a man. Tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed too long for his body. His skin was a sickly pale gray, stretched tight over a gaunt body, but his face terrified me. Hollow cheeks, lips pulled back too far, and eyes, sunken, dark eyes that reflected my flashlight beam like a cat's would, but showed nothing human behind them. He didn't move toward us. He simply stood there, watching with an unblinking stare. Somehow, that was worse than if he had charged at us. "Guys," I choked out, unable to say more. Tom looked back and his flashlight joined mine, illuminating the figure more clearly. I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Run," he whispered. "Run now." We bolted, no longer caring about noise or marking our path. The measured footsteps behind us broke into a run as well, matching our pace again. The sound bounced through the tunnels, multiplying until it seemed like we were being pursued by a dozen sets of feet. "Left here," Sarah shouted as we reached another junction. "No, right," I countered, catching a glimpse of one of my chalk marks. We veered right, our flashlight beams bouncing wildly off the walls as we ran. The tunnel narrowed, forcing us to duck lower. Water dripped from the ceiling, spattering on our heads and shoulders. The footsteps continued behind us, never falling behind, but never quite catching up either. "There," Alex pointed ahead where the tunnel widened into the central junction we'd first encountered. Beyond it, I could see the wooden stairs leading back up to the house. We scrambled up the steps, taking them two at a time. My lungs burned and my legs felt weak with fear. The footsteps were at the bottom of the stairs now, still following at the same steady pace. Tom reached the top first and shoved against the metal door. It swung open into the kitchen and we rushed through frantically. Alex slammed it shut behind us. "Lock it!" Sarah cried. "The lock's on the other side!" Alex yelled back, looking around frantically. "We need something to block it!" Tom grabbed a chair and wedged it under the doorknob. It wouldn't hold for long against a determined push, but it was better than nothing. "Go! Go!" I urged, already moving toward the window we'd entered through. We rushed through the kitchen and scrambled through the broken window one by one. Outside, the evening air felt warm compared to the chill of the tunnels. We didn't slow down, sprinting across the overgrown garden toward the wall. The wooden pallets still formed our makeshift ladder, and we climbed over in record time, not caring about the splinters digging into our hands. Only when we reached Tom's SUV, parked a block away, did we finally stop. We stood there, gasping for breath, looking back toward the mansion standing tall above the ivy-covered wall. What the hell was that? Alex panted, doubling over with her hands on her knees. "A person," Sarah said between breaths. "Had to be. Probably some homeless guy who's been living in the tunnels." "Did you see his eyes?" Tom asked, his voice unsteady. He looked at me and I could tell he'd seen what I had seen. That wasn't normal. "He was probably just high on something," Alex said, but her usual confidence was missing. "Meth can make people look pretty messed up." I leaned against the SUV. The image of that pale figure was burned into my mind. The unnatural height, the two long limbs, the hollow eyes that had reflected my flashlight in a way no human eyes should. "That wasn't someone on drugs," I said quietly. "Did you feel how cold it got when he appeared? That's not normal." "Let's not jump to supernatural explanations," Sarah said, though she still looked shaken. "There's probably a rational explanation for everything we experienced." We climbed into the SUV and Tom started the engine with shaking hands. As we pulled away from the curb, I kept watching the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that thin stranger watching us from the street. "Should we report this to someone?" Sarah asked as we drove. "If there is someone living down there, they might need help." "And tell them what?" Alex countered. "That we broke into an abandoned mansion and found tunnels we weren't supposed to be in? We'd be arrested for trespassing before we could finish the story." "Alex is right," Tom said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We can't go to the authorities without admitting we were somewhere we shouldn't have been." I remained silent, still trying to process what I'd seen. Part of me wanted to believe Sarah and Alex's explanation that it was just a homeless person or someone on drugs. But my instincts said otherwise. The unnatural cold, the perfect matching of our pace, those inhuman eyes. Whatever was in those tunnels wasn't just a person seeking shelter. "Maybe we should go back during the day," Alex suggested after a few minutes of silence. "Bring better equipment, proper cameras to document everything." "No," I said firmly. "We're not going back." "Mark, I mean it, Alex. Something is very wrong with that place. We never should have opened that door." Tom nodded in agreement. "I'm with Mark on this one. I don't know what that was, but I don't want to see it again." Alex looked like she wanted to argue but fell silent when she saw the expressions on our faces. Sarah reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "Let's all get some rest," she said gently. "Everything seems worse when you're tired and scared. It'll make more sense in the morning." The image of that pale, hollow-eyed figure haunted me for the next 2 days. I'd barely slept since our escape from the mansion, jumping at every shadow in my apartment and checking the locks on my doors and windows multiple times each night. I still felt cold despite the warm spring weather. "We're not going back there." I told Tom over the phone for what felt like the 100th time. Whatever that was in the tunnel, it wasn't normal. I know what I saw, Mark, my brother replied, his voice tense. But that's exactly why we need better documentation. If something supernatural is happening there, we need evidence. Evidence for what? So Alex can post it online and get more followers? Tom sighed. This isn't about social media. Something incredible might be happening in that house. Don't you want to understand it? I wanted to tell him no, that some mysteries are better left unsolved. But I knew my brother. Once Tom got an idea in his head, he rarely let it go. And he wasn't the only one. Alex is already planning to go back tomorrow, he continued. Sarah's on board too. They think you're overreacting. And what do you think? I asked. A long pause followed. I think there's more to that place than any of us understand. But I also think we'll be safer as a group than if some of us go alone. He had me there. The thought of my brother returning to that place without me made my stomach turn. If something happened to him because I wasn't there. Fine, I conceded reluctantly. But we go in daylight, stay together the entire time, and leave before dark. And we're not going back into those tunnels. Not for any reason. Deal, Tom agreed quickly, as if afraid I'd change my mind. The next morning we gathered at the same corner near the mansion. The day was clear and bright. The tall brick wall with ivy stood out against the sky. Alex arrived last, her truck filled with more equipment than before. Better cameras, stronger flashlights, even a small toolkit. Glad you decided to join us, Mark, she said with a grin that didn't quite reach her eyes. Let's just be quick, I replied. Get in, document what we need to, and get out. Sarah adjusted her backpack, looking unusually nervous. I brought a proper compass this time, and detailed notes on the house layout from what we saw before. We approached the wall, our makeshift pallet ladder still in place from 2 days ago. Tom went up first, then helped Sarah over. I followed, with Alex bringing up the rear. The overgrown garden looked different in daylight. The window we used should be right around here, Tom said as we made our way through the tangled vegetation. When we reached the back of the house where our entry point had been, we all stopped short. The window, the one Alex had cut open and we'd escaped through in panic, was now boarded up with fresh, pale wood that stood out against the weathered exterior of the mansion. That's not possible, Sarah whispered. Someone's been here, I said, running my hand over the new boards. Recently. Alex examined the boards, her expression a mix of concern and excitement. These are screwed in from the inside. Someone's definitely in there. Maybe it was already like this and we just didn't notice in the dark, Tom suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. No, I said firmly. We all came through this window. Someone boarded it up after we left. A heavy silence fell over our group as the implications sank in. Someone, or something, had sealed the entry point we'd used. We should leave, I said, already taking a step back. Wait, Alex pointed toward the side of the house. Look, there's a cellar entrance over there. Sure enough, half hidden by overgrown bushes was a slanted cellar door, the kind that led down into older homes' basements. We're not seriously considering going in there, I asked, though I already knew the answer. We came all this way, Alex said. We might as well check it out. Tom nodded in agreement. We'll just take a quick look inside. If anything feels off, we leave immediately. Sarah looked between us, then sighed. I have to admit, I'm curious about who boarded up the window. Outnumbered again, I followed as Alex led the way to the cellar doors. They were heavy wood, weathered but still solid. A rusted chain and padlock had once secured them, but the chain had been cut, the ends frayed and oxidized. This has been broken for a while, Alex observed, pulling the doors open. They creaked loudly in the quiet garden. Musty air came up from the darkness below. Stone steps descended into a basement area. Alex switched on her flashlight despite the daylight and started down, followed by Tom. "I don't like this," I muttered as Sarah and I brought up the rear. The basement was surprisingly organized, not the chaotic storage area I'd expected. Shelves lined the walls, empty except for a few dusty glass jars. A central workspace held what might have been a laboratory setup once, with tables and cabinets arranged in neat rows. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, undisturbed except for a path of footprints leading to the stairs that would connect to the main house. "This looks like some kind of research space," Sarah observed, examining the empty shelves. "Or a workshop," Tom added. Alex was already moving toward the interior staircase. "Let's check the kitchen, see if we can get to those tunnels again." I tensed at the thought. "Alex," we agreed. "Just to see if the door's still there," she interrupted. "Don't worry, I'm not planning to go exploring today." We climbed the stairs to find ourselves in a narrow hallway that led to the kitchen. Everything looked exactly as it had during our first visit. The cast iron pots still hanging from the rack, cabinets still filled with china. But there was one significant difference. The metal door that led to the tunnels now had a brand new padlock securing it. Thick, shiny, and impossible to miss against the aged metal of the door itself. "Someone's definitely been here," Tom said quietly, as if afraid of being overheard. Alex moved closer to examine the lock. "This is industrial grade, much stronger than the one I picked before." "Good," I said firmly, "because we're not opening it." Tom looked at me with surprise. "Don't you want to know why someone locked it? What they're trying to keep in or out?" "No, I don't," I replied. "That lock is a warning. Someone doesn't want people going down there, and after what we saw, I'm inclined to agree with them." Sarah had been scanning the kitchen floor with her flashlight. She suddenly stopped, the beam illuminating something near the old wood-burning stove. "Guys," she called softly, "look at this." We gathered around to see what she'd discovered. Wet footprints marked the floor, not ours, but larger prints that looked like they'd been made by heavy boots. They led from the tunnel door across the kitchen and disappeared into the hallway toward the front of the house. "These are still damp," I said, crouching to touch one lightly with my fingertip. "Someone was here within the last hour." The realization hit us all at once. We weren't alone in the mansion. The silence that had seemed oppressive before now felt dangerous, loaded with possibility. Every creak and settling sound of the old house took on new significance. "We need to leave," Sarah whispered. "Now." For once, Alex didn't argue. "Yeah, maybe that's best." We backed away from the footprints, all of us suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow and doorway. Instead of returning through the cellar, we decided to exit through the front door, wanting to put as much distance as possible between ourselves and the tunnel entrance. The grand entryway was just as we'd left it, the sheet-covered furniture standing like silent sentinels. Sunlight filtered weakly through the boarded windows. We moved quickly, no one speaking as we headed for the front door. "It's unlocked," Tom said with surprise as he turned the heavy iron knob. We spilled out onto the front porch, the bright daylight momentarily blinding after the dimness inside. I turned for one last look at the mansion before we left, my eyes automatically scanning the upper windows. That's when I saw it. A face, pale and gaunt, watching from a second-floor window. The same hollow eyes that had reflected my flashlight beam in the tunnels now stared down at me, unblinking and unmistakable. I felt suddenly terrified. I opened my mouth to alert the others, but something stopped me. By the time I looked again, the face was gone, leaving me to wonder if my fear had conjured it from shadows and reflections. "Mark, you coming?" Tom called from the overgrown path that led to the wall. "Yeah," I replied, tearing my eyes away from the window. "Right behind you." We made our way back through the tangled garden in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The climb over the wall felt like crossing a boundary between two worlds, and when my feet hit the sidewalk on the other side, I felt like I could breathe again. Well, that was a bust, Alex said as we loaded our unused equipment back into her truck. But at least we know someone's maintaining the place. Maintaining isn't the word I'd use, I replied. Guarding, maybe. Tom nodded. The new lock, the boarded window, someone's trying to keep people out. Or something in, I added quietly. The drive back was mostly silent. Sarah sat in the back seat with me, her phone illuminating her face as she typed frantically. What are you looking up? I asked, glancing over at her screen. The history of the mansion, she replied without looking up. There has to be some record of it somewhere. Any luck? She shook her head. Just vague references to a wealthy family that lived there in the early 1900s. The Crawfords, it looks like. They supposedly disappeared suddenly, and local legends say the house is cursed. Great, Tom muttered from the front seat. A cursed mansion. That's exactly what we needed. It's just local superstition, Sarah said, though she didn't sound convinced. I'll need to check the actual historical archives to get real information. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the events of the day replaying in my mind. The fresh boards, the new lock, the wet footprints, and that face at the window. Was it the same figure from the tunnels? And if so, what was it? A squatter with some kind of physical deformity? Or something else entirely? Eventually, exhaustion overtook me and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. The nightmare began immediately, so vivid I couldn't recognize it as a dream. I was back in the tunnels, alone this time. My flashlight flickered weakly, barely illuminating the packed earth walls around me. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness. I moved forward slowly, my feet making no sound on the dirt floor. A fork in the tunnel appeared before me. I hesitated, unsure which way to go. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow, measured, deliberate. The same sound we'd heard during our escape. I ran, taking the left passage without thinking. The tunnel twisted and turned, branching again and again until I was hopelessly lost. The footsteps followed, never speeding up but somehow always getting closer. I reached another fork and paused, gasping for breath. A whisper floated out of the darkness, so faint I almost missed it. Mark. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing. But the footsteps were closer now. I ran again, the tunnels growing narrower, the ceiling lower, until I was crawling on hands and knees through a space barely big enough for my body. The earth pressed in around me, and panic clawed at my throat. I emerged into a small chamber and froze. The pale figure stood at the only other exit, blocking my escape. In the dim light, I could see it more clearly than before. The unnaturally long limbs, the gray skin stretched tight over a gaunt frame, those hollow eyes that reflected light but contained only darkness. It smiled, revealing too many teeth. Then it spoke, its voice a dry whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. There is no way out. It lunged forward impossibly fast, hands reaching for my throat. I jerked awake with a gasp. Sweat soaked my sheets, and my room felt unusually cold. Moonlight filtered through my blinds. As my breathing slowly returned to normal, a terrible certainty settled over me. Whatever we had encountered in that mansion, whatever lurked in those tunnels, wasn't finished with us. The nightmare hadn't been just a dream. It had been a message. And somehow, I knew this was only the beginning. The dream always ended the same way. No matter how I ran, no matter which tunnel I chose, the pale figure always found me. Its hollow eyes reflected my flashlight beam like a cat's, but held none of the warmth of a living creature. And just before I woke, as its impossibly long fingers reached for my throat, it would whisper in that dry, ancient voice, "There is no way out." I lurched upright in bed for the 5th night in a row, gasping for air, my t-shirt soaked with sweat despite the chill in my apartment. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:17 a.m., almost the exact same time as the previous night, and the night before that. Something felt off about my bedroom. I looked around the shadows, unable to shake the feeling that someone, or something, had been watching me sleep. The curtains by my window swayed gently, though all the windows were closed. The room felt different, like something had moved through it recently. I reached for my phone, needing to hear another human voice. Tom answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Mark, what time is it?" "It happened again," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. A pause, then a sigh. "The dream?" "Yeah, exactly the same. The tunnels, the chase, the figure catching me at the end. Maybe you should see someone, a doctor. Get something to help you sleep." I ran a hand through my damp hair. "Pills won't fix this, Tom. This isn't just stress or PTSD. These dreams, they're connecting me to him. He's reaching out to me." "He? You mean whatever we saw in the tunnels?" "Yes." "No. I don't know." I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to clear my confused thoughts. "I need to understand what we encountered. I'm going to the library tomorrow to research the mansion's history." "You think that'll help?" "It has to. I can't keep living like this." After hanging up, I knew more sleep was impossible. I opened my laptop and spent the remaining hours until dawn searching for any information about the mansion. Most of what I found were vague references on local history websites. The place was known as the Crawford Mansion, built in 1897 by someone named Elias Crawford. There were mentions of the family's sudden disappearance in 1923, but nothing concrete. I needed more. Primary sources, newspaper archives, official records, the kind of things that wouldn't be digitized on the internet. As soon as the Oak Ridge Public Library opened the next morning, I was there, bleary-eyed but determined. The reference librarian looked concerned at my appearance. "Are you all right, young man? You look like you haven't slept in days." "Research project," I mumbled. "I'm looking for information about the Crawford Mansion on Hillcrest Avenue." Her expression changed immediately, eyebrows rising, lips pressing into a thin line. "The Crawford place? That's an unusual subject of interest." "Local history," I said vaguely. "Do you have any archives about it?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Newspaper microfilms from that era, some city records. Follow me." The archive room was cold and smelled of dust and aging paper. The librarian set me up at a microfilm reader and brought several reels of film. These contain the Oak Ridge Journal from 1895 to 1925. If you're looking for information on the Crawford family, you'll find it there. Let me know if you need anything else. She left me alone in the quiet room. The only sound was the soft whirring of the microfilm reader as I began my search. Hours went by as I scrolled through decades of local history. My eyes burned, but I pushed through the tiredness. And then, finally, I found something. May 15th, 1921. Noted physician's research draws controversy. The article detailed how Dr. Elias Crawford, once a respected medical researcher at Miskatonic University, had resigned his position to pursue unorthodox studies into the extension of human life. The university had distanced itself from his work, calling his theories dangerous and ethically unsound. I continued searching, finding more articles that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. December 3rd, 1921. Local man missing, last seen near Crawford Estate. March 17th, 1922. Second disappearance raises questions. July 8th, 1922. Crawford denies involvement in missing persons cases. The pattern was clear. Between 1921 and 1923, 7 people had disappeared in Oak Ridge. All had last been seen near the Crawford property. Police had investigated but found no concrete evidence linking the disappearances to Dr. Crawford. Then I found it. The article that made my blood run cold. April 2nd, 1923. Horror at Crawford Estate. Doctor missing. Laboratory discovered. I read the article twice, my hands shaking. Following yet another disappearance, authorities had finally obtained a warrant to search the Crawford property thoroughly. They found the mansion seemingly abandoned, no sign of Dr. Crawford or his family. But beneath the house, accessed through a locked door in the kitchen, they discovered an extensive network of tunnels and a hidden laboratory. The article was vague about what exactly was found there. It was 1923, after all, and newspapers were more restrained in their reporting, but phrases like evidence of unspeakable experiments and conditions that defy description leapt off the page. The most chilling detail came near the end of the article. Among the disturbing findings was a journal detailing Crawford's apparent success in extending the human condition beyond natural limitations. Authorities refused to elaborate on this statement, saying only that the underground areas have been sealed for public safety while the investigation continues. A follow-up article from 2 weeks later reported that the case remained unsolved. Dr. Crawford and his family were never found. The underground laboratory was permanently sealed by order of the county judge, but the mansion itself was left standing, eventually falling into disrepair as no one was willing to purchase the property. I was still processing this information when I found one last significant article, dated October 15, 1923. Crawford case closed. Authorities cite lack of evidence. The piece mentioned rumors that some evidence from the laboratory had gone missing before it could be properly documented. The case was officially closed, with Crawford presumed to have fled to avoid prosecution. But one quote from the chief investigator stuck with me. "I've been a police officer for 27 years, and what I saw in that underground laboratory will haunt me until my dying day. Some things aren't meant to be understood by ordinary men." I left the library as the sun was setting, my thoughts racing with what I'd discovered. It was obvious. We had stumbled upon Crawford's hidden laboratory, the site of his twisted experiments in extending human life. And the pale figure in the tunnels. Could it possibly be Crawford himself, somehow preserved through his own experiments? The thought made me shudder as I walked to my car. The logical side of me said it was impossible. No one could survive for 100 years in underground tunnels. But I wasn't so sure after seeing those hollow, reflecting eyes. I called an emergency meeting at my apartment that night. Tom arrived first, followed by Sarah. Alex was last, her usual energy somewhat subdued. "This better be good," she said, dropping onto my couch. I had plans tonight. I spread the printouts of the articles across my coffee table. "I found out what happened at the mansion," I said. "And I think I know what we saw in the tunnels." Tom leaned forward, already engaged. "Tell us." For the next 20 minutes, I detailed everything I'd discovered. Crawford's research, the disappearances, the underground laboratory, the abrupt end to the investigation. "The dates and details match perfectly," I concluded. "The locked metal door in the kitchen, the tunnels beneath the house. It's the same place mentioned in these articles. We found Crawford's laboratory." "And you think the figure we saw was what? Crawford himself?" Sarah asked, her scientific mind clearly struggling with the concept. "I don't know for sure," I admitted. "But his research was about extending human life beyond natural limitations. What if he succeeded? What if he found a way to preserve himself, but at a terrible cost? That would explain the inhuman appearance, the way it moved, those eyes." Alex had been unusually quiet during my explanation. Now she shook her head. "Mark, you're connecting dots that aren't there. Old newspaper articles about some mad scientist don't prove anything supernatural." "Then how do you explain what we saw?" I demanded. "That wasn't a normal person. It was probably just some squatter with a physical deformity," she replied. "Or maybe we were all on edge and our minds played tricks on us. It happens in dark, enclosed spaces." "All four of us had the same hallucination?" Tom said incredulously. "And what about the fresh locks and boarded windows? Someone is maintaining that place, keeping whatever's down there trapped." Sarah sighed, adjusting her glasses. "I admit the coincidences are striking, but I'm with Alex on this. There's probably a rational explanation. Homeless people often have untreated medical conditions that can make them look Unusual. I stood up, frustration boiling over. This isn't about being rational. It's about trusting what we experienced. We all felt the unnatural cold. We all saw how it matched our pace perfectly when we ran. Tell me that's normal human behavior. People can be weird, Mark, Alex said, her tone almost patronizing, especially people who choose to live in abandoned mansions. Tom moved to stand beside me. I believe you, Mark. Something was off about that place from the moment we entered. And those dreams you've been having, they're too specific to be coincidence. The room fell silent. The division was clear now. Tom and I on one side, Sarah and Alex on the other. So what do you suggest we do? Sarah finally asked. Nothing, I said firmly. We leave it alone. Whatever is down there, whether it's Crawford or something else, it's been contained for a reason. Alex leaned forward with that look in her eye that made my stomach tighten. Or, she said slowly, we go back with better equipment, proper documentation. If there really is something supernatural happening there, it would be the discovery of a lifetime. Absolutely not, I snapped. Did you not hear what I just said? People disappeared because of Crawford's experiments. The authorities sealed that place for a reason. And someone unsealed it, Alex countered. Don't you want to know why? Don't you want proof of what you're claiming? I don't need more proof. The nightmares are proof enough. Sarah looked uncomfortable. Nightmares aren't evidence, Mark. They're your brain processing trauma and fear. These aren't normal nightmares, I insisted. It's like he's reaching into my mind while I sleep. Each one is more vivid, more real, and always the same message. There is no way out. That's your subconscious talking, Sarah said gently, processing our escape from the tunnels. I could see it was pointless. They weren't going to believe me. Not really. Even Tom, though supportive, had doubt in his eyes. Fine, I said, gathering up the printouts. Believe what you want. But I'm done with that place. I'm not going back, and I strongly suggest none of you do either. Mark, Alex started. No, this discussion is over. After they left, Tom lingered at the door. You okay? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No. I haven't slept properly in a week, and now I know what we're dealing with, but half our group thinks I'm losing my mind. I don't think that, he assured me. I was there too, remember? I saw what you saw. But you don't fully believe my theory either. He hesitated. I believe something unusual is happening. I'm just not sure it's a 100-year-old experimenter living in tunnels. Then what is it? I don't know. But whatever it is, maybe it's better left alone, like you said. I nodded, grateful for even that much support. Thanks, Tom. At least I'm not completely alone in this. After he left, I collapsed onto my couch, exhaustion pulling at me. But I resisted sleep for as long as possible, knowing what waited for me in my dreams. The next 3 days followed the same pattern. The nightmares intensified each night, becoming more detailed, more invasive. In one dream, the pale figure led me to a chamber where rusted surgical equipment lined the walls. In another, it showed me jars containing what looked like human organs, preserved in cloudy fluid. Each dream ended the same way, with the figure catching me, its cold fingers on my throat whispering, "There is no way out." I began hallucinating during the day, catching glimpses of pale, elongated limbs in my peripheral vision, hearing footsteps when I was alone, feeling sudden drops in temperature in my apartment. Sleep deprivation was taking its toll, making it hard to distinguish reality from nightmare. Friday night, a week after our second visit to the mansion, Alex called. "We're going back tomorrow," she said without preamble. "Sarah's done more research on Crawford's work. We think there might be scientific value in what he was studying." "You can't be serious," I said, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "Deadly serious. Whatever you saw down there, whether it's a person or something else, deserves to be documented. Think about the implications if Crawford really did find a way to extend life." "At what cost, Alex?" Did you even read those articles? People disappeared. They were probably his test subjects. All the more reason to expose whatever's happening there, she argued. Look, we're going with or without you. I just thought you deserved to know. After she hung up, I sat in stunned silence. They were really going back to those tunnels, back to that pale figure with the hollow eyes. And if my dreams were any indication, they were walking into something far more dangerous than they realized. I couldn't let them do it. I couldn't let Tom face that thing again, even if he didn't fully believe my theory. My decision came with surprising clarity. I knew what I had to do. First, I called Tom. "Don't go tomorrow," I said as soon as he answered. "How did you—" "Alex just called me. She told me about the plan. Please, Tom, don't go back there." He was quiet for a moment. "I don't feel right letting them go alone. They're adults making their own choices. But I'm asking you, as your brother, please don't put yourself in danger again." "What about you? Are you coming to try to stop them?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm never going near that place again, but I'd sleep better knowing you weren't either." After a long pause, he sighed. "Okay, I'll tell them I'm out." Relief washed over me. "Thank you." Next, I gathered everything we had documented about the mansion, the photos on my phone, the sketches I'd made of the tunnel layout, the notes from my research, even the group chat logs discussing our visits. I transferred it all to a single USB drive, then deleted the originals. Finally, I texted Alex. "Need to talk. Important information about the mansion. Meet me at Riverside Park at midnight." Her reply came almost instantly. "Why so dramatic? Can't it wait until tomorrow?" "No. Midnight. Come alone." The park was deserted when I arrived, the air unusually cold for spring. I sat on a bench overlooking the river, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. Alex appeared right at midnight, approaching with her usual confident stride. "This better be good," she said, sitting beside me. "Midnight meetings are a bit theatrical, even for you." "I found more information," I said, not bothering with small talk, "about Crawford and what he was trying to accomplish." That caught her interest. "What kind of information?" "He believed he could transfer consciousness between bodies. That's what his experiments were about. Not just extending life, but moving a person's essence from one vessel to another. This was a lie, but a calculated one. I needed to make her understand the danger." "How do you know this?" she asked, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "There were more articles, interviews with his former colleagues. It's all here." I pulled out the USB drive. Everything I've found, plus all our documentation from the visits. She reached for it, but I held it back. "Before I give you this, I need you to promise you won't go back to the mansion." Alex laughed. "Are you serious? This is exactly why we need to go back. If Crawford really was transferring consciousness..." "He was experimenting on unwilling subjects, Alex. People disappeared. And whatever is down in those tunnels now is the result of those experiments. It's dangerous." "You don't know that for sure." "I do." I looked at her directly. "The nightmares aren't just dreams. They're messages. Warnings. That thing is reaching out, trying to lure people back." "Or maybe you're sleep-deprived and paranoid," she countered. I stood up, anger flaring. "This isn't a game. Whatever is down there, it wants out, and it will use anyone it can to accomplish that. Give me the drive, Mark. Not unless you promise to stay away from the mansion." She stood too, her expression hardening. "I can't do that. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. Then I can't give you this." I turned toward the river. "What are you doing?" Without answering, I hurled the USB drive as far as I could. It disappeared into the dark water with a small splash. "Are you insane?" Alex shouted, staring at the spot where the drive had vanished. "That had all our documentation." "Exactly. And now no one can use it to find their way back to that place." She turned to me, furious. "I have my own copies, you know. This achieves nothing. Maybe not, but at least I tried. I started walking away. Where are you going? Home. To pack. I'm leaving town for a while. This was another decision I'd made with surprising clarity. Distance seemed like the only way to break whatever connection had formed between me and the entity in the tunnels. Running away won't solve anything, Alex called after me. I paused, looking back at her. Neither will going back to that mansion. But you're going to do it anyway, aren't you? Her silence was answer enough. Then this is goodbye, I said. I can't watch you walk into that trap, and I won't be here to help when things go wrong. Mark, you're overreacting. Maybe. But I've seen what's down there. I've felt it reaching into my mind every night for a week. And I'm done. I left her standing there by the river, our friendship effectively over. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for days felt marginally lighter. I couldn't stop Alex from going back to the mansion, but I'd done everything I could to protect myself and Tom. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Alex just messaged, said you're leaving town? Call me. I would call him, but not tonight. Tonight I needed to pack, to put as much distance as possible between myself and Crawford Mansion before the sun rose. There would be time to explain everything to Tom later when I was safely away. The nightmares might follow me. Part of me expected they would, but at least I wouldn't be near enough to act on whatever compulsions they might try to instill. At least I wouldn't be another disappearance linked to Dr. Elias Crawford's experiments. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some doors are locked for a reason. Whatever lurked in those tunnels, whether it was Crawford himself or something he created, it was better left undisturbed.